Marcus Chen betrayed me, but the real insult was how little effort he put into the lie. I stood before his expansive mahogany desk, the scent of his Tom Ford cologne, a cloying fog of failure, and watched him practice his regretful face in the reflection of the floor-to-ceiling windows. It was an expression he was getting far too much use out of. This time, the tell was a slight twitch at the corner of his left eye, a micro expression of smug satisfaction that the polished glass couldn't hide. The email from corporate, confirming my promotion to vice president of digital strategy had been postponed indefinitely, was a 20-minute-old wound in my inbox, but the betrayal was a chronic ache I had learned to live with for 3 years. On his desk, placed with the casual cruelty of a cat toying with a half-dead mouse, sat the tangible proof of his deceit, a gleaming brass nameplate. It was engraved with my name, followed by the VP title I would once again not be receiving. I had seen the purchase order. He'd had it custom-made weeks ago. The bitter tang of treachery coated my tongue, so sharp and metallic it was all I could taste. My rebirth would not be quiet or graceful. It would be forged in the fire of this final, condescending humiliation. He turned, the regret mask sliding perfectly into place. "I'm so sorry," he began, the words smooth and practiced. "It's the budget constraints. Head office is tightening the purse strings across the board. It's completely out of my hands." By the door, my supposed best friend and current director of marketing, Sarah Martinez, gave a sad little shrug, her perfectly manicured fingers fidgeting with her phone. The screen's glow illuminated the faint smirk she couldn't quite contain. A new Chloe handbag the color of dried blood rested in her lap. No doubt a recent bonus-funded purchase. She was probably already crafting a sympathetic text to the team's group chat, a digital performance of sorrow for the girl who got screwed over again. The low buzz of the fluorescent lights overhead sounded like a swarm of angry wasps, mirroring the fury building in my chest. They saw a victim, a doormat. They had no idea they were looking at a predator who had just been poked one too many times. "I understand it's disappointing," Marcus continued, his voice oozing a counterfeit empathy that made my skin crawl. "But we've scheduled a meeting in Conference Room 3 to discuss a new development plan for you. Dr. Thorne and the other department heads are waiting. We want to make sure you still feel valued." The conference room ambush was as predictable as it was pathetic. The air was stale with the scent of cheap coffee and expensive perfume. 6 department heads were arranged around the table like vultures waiting for their meal to finally stop breathing. At the head sat Dr. Rebecca Thorne, my former mentor, a woman whose academic accolades were matched only by her capacity for casual backstabbing. She offered a tight, pitying smile, her signature Mont Blanc pen resting beside a stack of papers that were presumably a detailed account of my professional inadequacies. Then, a voice crackled through the speakerphone in the center of the table, tinny and unnervingly familiar. "I'm here to help mediate," my sister Elena announced from her downtown law firm. "I want to ensure this is a productive conversation for everyone." The sound of my own sister's voice, weaponized and deployed against me by my corporate enemies, was the deepest cut of all. It was a second, brutally public face slap, delivered right there in front of my colleagues. First, Marcus's transparent theatrics, now a family-sanctioned tribunal designed to manage my disappointment. They weren't just denying my promotion, they were staging an intervention for my ambition. They performed their parts with grim sincerity. Rebecca spoke of my unpolished leadership style. The head of sales mumbled about my lack of client-facing experience. Each critique was a carefully worded stone cast in my direction. They thought they were dismantling my confidence piece by piece. They were oblivious to the fact that their words were just distant, meaningless noise. While they droned on, my mind was miles away, in the cold, silent world of numbers and code. I was calculating the compound interest on my Ethereum holdings, watching the real-time value of my crypto portfolio tick upward on a secret app on my phone. They saw the quiet, overlooked analyst in a clearance rack blazer, the scholarship girl from a state school who they assumed was drowning in student debt. They had no earthly idea that for the last 5 years, while they were padding their expense reports and playing golf, I had been building a silent digital empire. The girl they thought they were managing out of a promotion could buy and sell this entire floor of the building without noticing the dip in her net worth. My thumb hovered over the icon from my notes app, where my resignation letter, sharp, concise, and effective immediately, had been waiting for months. Marcus's voice pulled me from my financial reverie. He was leaning forward, attempting to look magnanimous as he delivered the killing blow. What we can offer you, instead of the VP role, is a unique development opportunity, a 6-month project focusing on. I didn't hear the rest. The sound in my ears was no longer the buzzing of angry wasps, but the roar of a tidal wave about to break. I pushed my chair back, the scrape of its legs against the marble floor a screech of finality that cut him off mid-sentence. 6 pairs of eyes, plus the disembodied voice of my sister, turned to me in surprise. Actually, I said, my voice dangerously calm, I quit. The 2 words hung in the air, more powerful than any title, more final than any corporate decree. The shock on their faces was exquisite. It was the first time in 3 years they had ever truly seen me. But this time, I wasn't just walking away. I was walking away to burn their world to the ground. The descent in the glass elevator was a silent, 16-story drop into absolute freedom. My phone buzzed incessantly in my pocket, a frantic, desperate vibration against my thigh. I didn't need to look. It was Sarah, her messages no doubt escalating from feigned concern to outright panic. Wait. Let's talk this through. You're being emotional. Don't throw your career away. I let the messages pile up, unread. She was playing checkers in a burning building. I was already 3 moves into a chess game she didn't know existed. The elevator doors opened onto the lobby's cavernous, marble-floored expanse. The air was cool and still, a stark contrast to the suffocating tension of the conference room. It smelled clean, like money and indifference. Stepping away from the security desk, I pulled out my secure cryptophone, a sleek, matte black device that cost more than my first car, and dialed a number I knew by heart. Julian, I said when he answered on the second ring. I was wondering when you'd call. Julian Croft's voice came through, impossibly clear, with the faint sound of seagulls in the background. Don't tell me, they did it again. 3rd time's the charm, I said, my voice flat. Are you still looking for a mid-cap tech firm for the tech venture fund? One with lazy management, inflated quarterly reports, and a portfolio of severely undervalued patents. There was a pause, followed by a low chuckle. I'm always looking for a unicorn like that. You have a name for me? Pinnacle Corp, I said, looking up at the gleaming silver logo above the lobby doors. And I have a key to every single one of its skeletons. Upstairs, I played the part of the broken woman. I packed the contents of my small cubicle into a cardboard box with methodical slowness, letting my former colleagues whisper and stare. They saw my quiet movements as evidence of an emotional breakdown, a narrative that would comfort them. Dr. Thorne approached my desk, her jasmine perfume an assault on my senses. She placed a hand on my shoulder, a gesture of faux intimacy that made my stomach turn. This is very unlike you, dear, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. A rash decision made in the heat of the moment will only lead to regret. Marcus is willing to overlook your outburst if you reconsider. I looked up at her, summoning the most defeated expression I could manage. I just need some time, I whispered meekly. She patted my shoulder, satisfied. While she saw a shattered employee, my fingers were flying across my phone's keyboard beneath the lip of the desk. I sent 3 encrypted messages to 3 different private investors in 3 separate time zones, using a proprietary algorithm I'd designed to be untraceable. The messages were simple. Pinnacle, it's time. Await instructions. They thought I was packing up a box of cheap office supplies and withered desk plants. I was laying the foundation for a hostile takeover. The coffee shop across the street became my new headquarters. It was one of those aggressively artisanal places where the steam from the espresso machine hissed like a conspiracy. I claimed a small table in the back corner with a clear view of the Pinnacle Corp building, my untouched latte growing cold beside my laptop. This was my war room. At 2 p.m. sharp, I initiated a video call. The face that appeared on my screen belonged to Madison Cross, the formidable CEO of Apex Holdings. She sat in a white leather chair, the skyline of Singapore glittering behind her through the penthouse windows of her office. "Heard you finally pulled the trigger," Madison said, her smile sharp as a shard of glass. She'd been waiting 2 years for me to give her the signal, ever since we'd met at a fintech conference in Zurich where I was a presenter and she was the keynote speaker. She saw past the cheap suit and recognized the value of the code I'd written. "Tell me you have what I need." I have their entire internal audit from last quarter, their unannounced product delays, their security vulnerabilities, and a list of every executive who's been cooking the books, I said, keeping my voice low. Marcus Chen has been inflating their subscriber numbers by at least 18% for the last 2 years to juice the stock price before his options vest. Madison's eyes lit up with a predatory gleam. "That's my girl, send it over. Anonymously, of course." By 3 p.m., the first domino had fallen. I packaged the most damning evidence into 3 separate data packets and routed them through a chain of international servers before they landed in the inboxes of 3 of the most ruthless financial journalists in the country. I watched the Pinnacle building, waiting. It didn't take long. Just after 3:30 p.m., I saw the silhouette of Marcus Chen in his corner office window. He started pacing, his phone clamped to his ear. His movements grew more agitated, a caged animal realizing the hunter was already inside the enclosure. His panic was a balm to my bruised soul. The final act of the day came at 5:10. My personal phone, the one everyone knew about, rang with my sister's personalized ringtone. I let it ring 4 times before answering, composing my voice into a mask of weary job seeker. "Hello? What did you do?" Elena's voice was tight, stripped of its earlier condescending calm. The background noise of her office was frantic. "What are you talking about? I'm updating my LinkedIn profile and trying not to have a panic attack, thanks for asking." "Don't lie to me," she hissed. "The SEC just served Pinnacle with an informal inquiry. They're asking about their quarterly reports. The stock is already down 6% in after-hours trading. This doesn't just happen. You wouldn't." Her lawyer's mind was sharp, connecting dots she couldn't yet see. But she, like all the others, had made the fatal error of underestimating me. She thought I was the little sister who needed protecting and mediating. The lie was effortless, and it tasted as sweet as honeyed revenge. "I told you, Elena, I quit," I said, my voice smooth as silk. "Right now, I'm just job hunting." I ended the call, took a slow sip of my cold latte, and watched the lights flicker on in the Pinnacle building as my former colleagues prepared for a very, very long night. 2 days after I quit, I was sipping a glass of obscenely expensive Pinot Noir on the wraparound balcony of my penthouse apartment. An oasis of steel and glass they never knew existed. Below me, the city lights glittered like a carpet of scattered diamonds. This was my real life, the one I lived when I wasn't playing the role of the overlooked analyst. It was a life funded by Neurotech Industries, the AI company I founded under a pseudonym 6 years ago. My phone, resting on the teak table beside me, began to vibrate with a series of synchronized notifications. I picked it up and watched my plan unfold in real time on LinkedIn. One by one, 5 of Pinnacle's top software engineers, the very architects of their entire platform, publicly announced their new positions at a company called Quantum Dynamics. My shell corporation, registered in Delaware and staffed by exactly 1 person. Me. The city lights blurred through my wine glass as I imagined the shockwaves tearing through Pinnacle's leadership. This wasn't just losing employees. It was a public, humiliating gutting of their most valuable asset. Just as I was savoring the moment, my building's intercom buzzed. It was Sarah, her voice a little too bright. "Brought pad thai and wine. Thought you might need a friend." I let her in, bracing myself for the performance. She swept into my living room, her eyes widening almost imperceptibly as she took in the minimalist Italian furniture, the original abstract art on the walls, and the view that stretched all the way to the bay. She'd always assumed I lived in a cramped, budget-friendly walk-up. The lie was right there in her eyes, the sudden, jarring realization that my life was not what she had imagined. She placed the takeout containers on my marble coffee table and poured out her crocodile tears. I just can't believe this is happening, she lamented, sinking into my couch like she belonged there. Losing all five of them, all at once? They say some mysterious headhunter poached them for a stealth startup. Marcus is losing his mind. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. You haven't heard anything, have you? Through the grapevine? I adopted my best naive expression. That's awful. They were the best engineers we had. I let her talk, feigning sympathy while the Thai food grew cold and congealed between us. Her real mission was obvious. She was here to gather intel. As she rambled on about the chaos at the office, she angled her phone carelessly on her lap. On its screen, I could clearly see the group chat I was no longer a part of. The messages scrolled by in a frantic waterfall of panic. Dr. Thorne, find out who is behind quantum dynamics now. Marcus Chen. I've hired a private investigator. They're looking into it. Elena Martinez. Be careful. A coordinated talent acquisition like this could be grounds for a tortious interference claim if we can identify the responsible party. I'm offering my services pro bono to protect the company. Protect the company. My own sister. The casualness of the betrayal still had the power to sting. They thought they were the hunters setting a PI on a ghost. They were the prey, and they were bleeding out without even knowing where the wound was. Excuse me for a second, I said, standing up. I just need to use the restroom. My bathroom, with its white quartz countertops and rain shower, became my second war room. I locked the door, sat on the edge of the deep soaking tub, and pulled out my work phone. Phase 2 was ready. With a few taps, I authorized my lawyer in Delaware to execute the offers. 3 more of Pinnacle's key employees, the entirety of their data science and machine learning division, received emails. The offers were life-changing: double their current salaries, a 40% signing bonus, and an equity package in quantum dynamics that would make them millionaires within 5 years. They were offers no sane person could refuse. I flushed the toilet for effect, the sound covering the soft chime of the final authorization being sent. By morning, Pinnacle Corp wouldn't just be bleeding, it would be crippled. When I returned to the living room, Sarah was staring at her phone, her face pale. The mask of friendly concern had vanished, replaced by genuine shock. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with a dawning horror. There's an emergency board meeting tomorrow morning, she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. The stock is dropping again, fast. She shook her head, the pieces clicking together in her mind in the most unsatisfying way. This can't be a coincidence. I walked over to the wine bottle, the smooth, cool glass a comfort in my hand. I refilled her glass, then my own, the dark red liquid swirling like blood in the bottom of the crystal. I gave her a small, tight smile, devoid of all warmth. Bad luck, I said softly, raising my glass. It often comes in waves. The downtown Starbucks buzzed with the frantic energy of a Monday morning. To anyone who glanced over, I was just another freelancer hunched over a laptop, nursing a single coffee for hours. They saw the LinkedIn page open on my screen, a perfect camouflage for the real work happening in a small, encrypted window in the corner. While the espresso machine hissed and steamed, I wasn't job hunting, I was systematically dismantling a corporation. Working through a secure channel with 2 hedge fund managers I'd cultivated for years, I gave the signal to begin aggressively shorting Pinnacle's stock. Simultaneously, I released my final data package, a detailed expose on Pinnacle's delayed product pipeline and critical security flaws, to a fresh set of tech bloggers and industry analysts. The hiss of the milk steamer punctuated each notification on my phone, a triumphant soundtrack to Marcus Chen's dawning financial ruin. For lunch, I met Elena at the Gilded Sparrow, an absurdly expensive restaurant where conversations were conducted in hushed tones over artfully plated food. Her usual flawless composure was gone, replaced by a brittle tension that was painful to watch. The dark circles under her eyes were stark against her pale skin, a testament to the sleepless nights I had been giving her. She had been officially retained by Pinnacle to handle the escalating legal crisis, a delicious conflict of interest that her pride wouldn't allow her to acknowledge. Someone is targeting the company with surgical precision, she said, stabbing at a microgreen in her $40 salad as if it had personally offended her. This isn't random. First the SEC inquiry, then the talent exodus, and now this stock crash. It's a coordinated attack. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. If you've heard anything, any rumors about who might be doing this, you need to tell me. People's jobs are at stake. Our family's reputation is tied to that company's success. I took a delicate sip of water, my expression a carefully constructed mask of concern. It sounds awful, Elena, but I've been focused on my own next steps. You know how it is. Her fork clattered onto her plate. No, I don't know how it is. You disappear after one bad day and the entire company you worked for starts to implode. It's conspicuous. Dessert arrived just as my phone vibrated with a call from an unknown number. I excused myself and answered. The voice on the other end was hollowed out, stripped of all its academic authority. It was Dr. Thorne. 3 of our biggest clients just terminated their contracts, she said, her voice thin and reedy. They received anonymous documentation of our data security vulnerabilities. The same vulnerabilities you flagged in a report 6 months ago, the one Marcus buried. There was a long pause. I know we hurt you, she admitted, the words sounding like they were being ripped from her throat. But this level of destruction, it helps no one. It's scorched earth. I listened to her pleas, my eyes fixed on the stock ticker widget on my phone's home screen. PIN, 32.4%. I'm not sure what you want me to say, Rebecca, I said, using her first name for the first time ever. Actions have consequences. I ended the call before she could respond. The October sky wept a cold, persistent drizzle as I stood on the slick stone steps of the county courthouse late that afternoon. I wasn't there to meet a lawyer. I was acting as my own agent. In my hand, I held a thick envelope containing the final legal documents, personally signed and notarized. I walked inside, the click of my heels echoing in the quiet hall, and filed the paperwork myself. At precisely 4:01 p.m., 1 minute after the market closed, the hostile takeover bid went public. A press release distributed globally through every major financial newswire hit the internet like a tsunami. Quantum Dynamics, the mysterious and well-funded startup, was officially offering to acquire all outstanding shares of Pinnacle Corp for 60 cents on the dollar, a brutal but fair valuation for the corporate carcass I had created. Standing in the rain, I let the cold drops run down my face, washing away the last 3 years of bitterness and humiliation. My phone, the sleek black burner, began to explode. A call from Marcus. A call from Elena. A call from a blocked number that was surely Dr. Thorne. Another from Sarah. I ignored them all, letting their panicked summons go to voicemail. Victory was a moment best savored in silence. Then a single text message lit up the screen, cutting through the noise. It was from Sarah. We know it's you. We need to talk. The hunt was over. The game of shadows was finished. It was time for the reveal. The Pinnacle Corp boardroom was exactly as I had left it 2 weeks ago. A sterile mahogany and glass cage, built for soulless debates about market share. But this time, I walked in as the owner, not the sacrifice. The 4 people who had orchestrated my humiliation were already seated, their faces etched with a mixture of dread and exhaustion. They looked up as I entered, and a wave of pure, delicious shock washed over them, silencing their nervous chatter. They were expecting the meek analyst in a department store blazer. They got a woman wearing a custom-tailored Tom Ford suit the color of midnight, her hair professionally styled in a sleek, severe cut. In my hand, I carried a black leather portfolio that cost more than Marcus's monthly mortgage payment. Without a word, I walked to the head of the table, the seat Marcus always occupied, and placed my portfolio down with a soft, definitive thud. My heels clicked against the marble with the finality of a gavel. Good morning, I said, my voice as steady and unyielding as mountain stone. The silence that answered me was a meal in itself. Sarah's perfectly applied lipstick couldn't hide the tremor in her lips. Elena's face was a bloodless mask of disbelief. Marcus looked like he'd seen a ghost, while Dr. Thorne simply stared, her academic mind failing to compute the data before her. I believe there's been a misunderstanding about who I am, I began, letting my gaze drift over each of them. So, allow me to introduce myself properly. I am not just the analyst you betrayed 3 times for a promotion, symbolized by a cheap brass nameplate. I paused, letting the memory of that small, specific humiliation land. I am the founder and sole owner of Neurotech Industries. I am the anonymous investor who created quantum dynamics from scratch. And as of 9:30 this morning, I am the majority shareholder of the private equity fund that now owns all of Pinnacle Corporation's outstanding debt. I opened my portfolio and began to spread the documents across the polished mahogany like a dealer laying out a winning hand. You're all evidence-based people. So, here's the evidence. I slid a patent filing from 5 years ago across the table. My name was clearly listed as the inventor of the predictive algorithm Pinnacle had licensed last year, their biggest revenue driver. I followed it with SEC filings from 2019, detailing the liquidation of a cryptocurrency portfolio worth 8 figures, the proceeds of which were moved into a blind trust. My trust. Then came the board meeting minutes from 3 different tech startups they had never heard of, all controlled by me. I've been building this empire in my evenings and weekends while you were all busy stealing my lunch from the office refrigerator and questioning my leadership potential. Marcus finally found his voice sputtering with incoherent rage. This is impossible. It's fraud. You were just what, Marcus? I cut him off, my voice turning to ice. Just the invisible woman who ghost wrote your presentations and made them coherent? Just the quiet coder who fixed the platform's bugs at 3 a.m. so you could take the credit in the morning meeting? I was never just anything. You were all just too blinded by your own arrogance and my gender to see who I truly was. Dr. Thorne's professional composure finally shattered, revealing the ugly snobbery beneath. But you were the scholarship girl from state school, she stammered, as if my humble beginnings were a defense against my success. The one who ate instant ramen for dinner in the break room. A real smile touched my lips for the first time. I was, and that scholarship girl taught herself to code in Python when she was 12. That ramen I ate for dinner? It was cheap, which allowed me to save enough money from my work-study job to buy my first cryptocurrency mining rig back when it was still a novelty. While you were all networking at the country club, I was in my tiny apartment revolutionizing decentralized financial technology. You saw a poor girl you could exploit. You should have seen a predator. Elena leaned forward, her lawyer brain desperately searching for an angle, an escape route from the facts I had laid before them. Her voice was strained. Even if every word of this is true, you can't just do this. You can't destroy people's careers, their lives, out of spite. I gathered my papers, my movements calm and deliberate. The finality of the moment settled over the room. I looked at my sister, at the woman who chose a company's reputation over her own family. I'm not destroying anything, Elena, I said, my voice softening into something far more dangerous than shouting. I'm simply buying it. As if on cue, the boardroom door opened and my new assistant, a sharp young woman I'd hired away from a competitor last week, walked in carrying a final set of acquisition documents. She placed them neatly in front of me. I picked up a pen. Shall we proceed with the hostile takeover? The apologies came exactly as I knew they would. A desperate, undignified rain on the drought-cracked earth of their careers. The first was Marcus, who cornered me in his corner office, now my corner office. He was surrounded by cardboard boxes, the scent of his expensive cologne now curdled with the stench of fear. In a move of such cinematic self-abasement, I almost laughed. He literally dropped to his knees on the fine wool carpet. I'll give you anything, he pleaded, his eyes wild. Stock options, profit sharing, my own position, just name it. Tell me what you want. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind him, I watched the slow, graceful dance of construction cranes, erecting the new skyline of a city I was rapidly coming to own. I looked down at the man who had thought me unworthy of a title and felt nothing but the cold, clean satisfaction of a problem being solved. Sarah caught me in the underground parking garage, her face a mess of streaked mascara and blotchy skin. She clutched at the sleeve of my suit jacket, her manicured fingers digging into the fabric. We were best friends, she sobbed, her voice echoing in the stark concrete space. I swear I always defended you behind closed doors. I told them they were making a mistake. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a sickly pallor on her lies. I gently but firmly removed her hand from my arm. You defended me so well that you recommended someone else for my promotion. Twice, I said, my voice flat. Your friendship was just another line item on your political expense report. Her excuses died in her throat, lost in the smell of gasoline and defeat. Dr. Thorne tried a different tactic. She requested a meeting in her office, a sanctuary of psychology textbooks, and meaningless academic awards that would soon be cleared out. She tried to reclaim her role as the wise mentor, her voice full of patronizing pity. I was only ever protecting you from failure, dear, she said, her hands steepled on her desk. You weren't ready for that level of responsibility. The stress would have crushed you. She still didn't get it. She still thought her condescension was a kindness. I ran a single finger along the edge of her large oak desk, soon to be kindling, or perhaps donated to a community college. The only thing you were protecting, Rebecca, was your own ego. The hardest was Elena. She asked me to meet for dinner at Rossi's, the little Italian place from our childhood where our mom used to take us after piano recitals. Over checkered tablecloths that held 2 decades of happier memories, my sister finally shattered. I was trying to help you from the inside, she insisted, tears welling in her eyes. I was trying to mitigate the damage. Family protects family. The irony was a bitter pill. She had protected the institution that harmed me, the colleagues who betrayed me, the system that held me down. She had protected everyone except the one person who should have mattered most. Their final, unified plea came a week later. They requested my presence in the boardroom where it all began. They stood together, a sad, united front of my former tormentors, looking diminished and lost under the bright lights. They offered everything: a public apology, financial compensation, a new title, a new role, a new start. They let their arguments and promises and pleas fill the air until only a heavy, expectant silence remained. I let that silence hang for a long moment. Then I stood, adjusting the cuff of my jacket with deliberate calm. I looked each of them in the eye, one by one. No. The word, small and quiet, dropped into the room like a stone into a perfectly still lake, the ripples radiating outward to dash their last hopes against the rocks. But we can change, Sarah whispered desperately. People can grow, Dr. Thorne added, her voice cracking. Family forgives, Elena pleaded, her hands clasped in front of her as if in prayer. Marcus for once said nothing. He knew the game was over. I walked toward the door, my heels marking time like a funeral march for the relationships that lay dead on the floor. Some things can't be undone, I said, turning back to face them one last time. Some trust can't be rebuilt. Some people aren't worth forgiving. I walked out and didn't look back. 6 months later, I was standing on the sun-drenched deck of my private yacht, the Catharsis, watching the sunset bleed gold and crimson into the vast expanse of the Pacific. The salt breeze was clean and sharp, a world away from the recycled office air and stale betrayals I had once breathed. My phone buzzed with a notification from my assistant, a summary of the latest quarterly reports. Quantum Dynamics, the company born from my righteous anger, had just landed its largest government contract to date. The number had so many zeros, I had to read it twice. A genuine, unforced smile touched my lips. The old Pinnacle Court building still stood in the heart of the financial district, but it was no longer a monument to corporate greed. After the acquisition, I had the entire structure gutted. It was now the Neurotech Collective, a modern campus providing affordable, subsidized housing for young tech workers and their families. On my way to my own office, I sometimes drove past and saw young programmers heading home, laughing, not burdened by the toxic ambition that had once poisoned those walls. Their freedom felt like my own. Coffee tastes different when you own the shop. My favorite corner booth was at Grind Coffee, a local spot I had frequented during my takedown. After the takeover, I'd bought it, redesigned it into a beautiful community workspace for freelancers and startups, and kept the entire staff on with a significant raise and full benefits. The barista, a kind woman who used to work in Pinnacle's now defunct marketing department, brought my usual order with a smile that reached her eyes. Here there were no politics, no backstabbing, just good coffee and the quiet hum of honest work. The Forbes interview went live at Market Open, the timing perfectly calibrated by my new PR team. The headline was sensational, exactly as I'd wanted. Tech mogul's secret empire, how she built billions while working as a corporate analyst. My photo graced the cover, not the tired, overlooked employee from my past life, but the confident, clear-eyed entrepreneur I had always been underneath. The article's first paragraph captured it all. Some people collect art, others collect companies. She does both. My new office overlooked the city from the 47th floor of the tallest skyscraper downtown. The floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a kingdom of lights and possibilities that I had conquered. The desk was a vast, imposing slab of mahogany. I'd kept Marcus's just because I could. It served as a daily reminder. But everything else was mine. The clean lines, the natural materials, the art on the walls that cost more than Pinnacle's entire annual marketing budget, and a view that reminded me how far one could climb from a suffocating cubicle. A weekly summary report from my assistant included a section for personnel updates. It was a sanitized list of the fates of my former colleagues. The Elena Martinez Foundation for Women's Legal Aid was reportedly closing due to a sudden and insufficient level of funding. Sarah's boutique marketing agency had folded last month after two major clients pulled out. Dr. Thorne was now teaching Psychology 101 at a local community college, a humbling I hoped that might finally make her a decent educator. And Marcus was a mid-level project manager at a smaller firm, a man destined to be perpetually, wonderfully overlooked. I felt nothing reading it. They were simply data points from a closed chapter. That afternoon, my assistant brought in the final paperwork for the endowment I was establishing at my old state university. The Phoenix Scholarship would provide full-ride scholarships, including housing and expenses, for first-generation college students majoring in technology. It was for the girl eating ramen and studying code until 3 a.m., so she could dream bigger than mere survival. The cycle of ambitious, brilliant women being underestimated and exploited because of their background would break, starting here. As the sun finally disappeared into the Pacific, I stood on my apartment balcony, the same one where I had plotted my revenge. I poured myself a glass of wine, not the cheap grocery store vintage of my analyst days, but a rare Burgundy that cost more than I used to make in a month. The deep red liquid caught the last light of dusk like liquid fire. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new companies to acquire, new problems to solve. But tonight, I was exactly where I belonged, at the top of a world I had built with my own two hands. The city lights began to twinkle below like fallen stars, each one representing a life, a dream, a struggle, a second chance. I raised my glass to the glittering skyline, to the woman I used to be and the empire she had built. I whispered the two words that had not been an ending, but a declaration of war and the beginning of my real life. Actually, I quit.